further ado, I would like to introduce Donovan, Brien, and Matt Boodleman. Typesetting. Come on up, guys.
Hi, how you guys doing this morning?
Good.
Good? That wasn't very emphatic. So really what we're going to do today is quickly talk about what is typesetting. First of all, anyone, raise your hand if you know or have seen typesetting or been to the website, you know what it is. Okay, good portion of you. But for those who don't, we'll quickly go over the purpose, why we created typesetting, and our ideas behind it, and go through a lot of the challenges we overcame to kind of do this, since taking on a project of this size can seem daunting at first. And we really want to, by the end of this, inspire you. As you see on all your name tags today, we wanted you to write down what big challenge that you'd like to take on if you had time, money, permission, or the network to do that. And hopefully by the end of this, you'll see how you can take on a big project and come out of it on top, instead of letting it eat yourself alive, like it almost did with us. So yeah, I'll get started, and Donovan, let you take it.
Hello. So here's a design inspiration site. This is one of my favorites. It's called Design Inspiration, and it's a big part of my process, obviously, as I'm sure it is for all of you. But one of the problems that I started noticing with design inspiration sites is that you get this little window into this project or into this artist's world, but you don't really get the stories or the explanation or the setting behind it. So while this sort of website serves a great purpose and it's extremely useful, there's something lost in translation. So take, for instance, this one project amidst the 10 other projects on the page. You can kind of lose it. You can click on it and examine it a little bit better, but really it's just a footnote on this page. So I want to do a little exercise. So try and evaluate this piece. Try and think of it in the real world. Think of how it works, how it doesn't work, visually as a packaging design. And try and hold this impression, hold these opinions in your mind. So make a mental note of that.
My idea was to produce portraits of the orchestra. It's a container for 3 CDs and photos. And it was this. I have the CDs here now, the booklet. I can show you how it works.
So I know the audio is a bit low on this, but this is from our first video that we did with Elizabeth Koff, and it really, at first when you're looking at this piece, I'm sure it changed in your mind a lot once you saw how it worked and how it made noise on its own. But it was a CD packaging for an orchestra, and Elizabeth Koff came up with the idea to basically take the package itself and have it make noise as you were opening and closing it, to kind of tie in this whole theme of orchestra and music and creating music and listening to music. And this is something that really gets lost in translation on just an inspiration website where you're just looking at a photo and maybe some descriptive text. For us, it was, typesetting was about getting behind the work, finding out where it originated, how they came up with those ideas, and what sort of influenced them to make this piece. Actually, more of that episode can be currently viewed on our website, typesetting.tv, as well as a new episode of Berlin. So stepping back a little bit, when we first got started with this idea, Donovan was going to walk you through what he was thinking and how he even came up with something like that.
So basically, starting back from the beginning, I first got this idea when I was hanging out with a friend of mine, and I said, I'm really disappointed there's not a design-themed travel documentary, because I love travel documentaries. And he just said, so why don't you make one? And I realized there wasn't really a good reason for that. Money, approval, all that doesn't really matter. At the end of the day, it was, if I really wanted to do it, I could make it happen. So that's when I came to Matt with the project idea.
Yeah, and so first when he said, I want to do a web-based documentary film series on European designers, and I'm leaving in 60 days, I was like, you're crazy, and I think we should do it. So what he had actually done was he had already set up this trip, flying to Central Europe, to Istanbul, and essentially, with the matter of, 2 months, we had to basically decide how we were going to do this project. We had to go find 6 designers in 6 different cities and go contact them, come up with questions, and we had to find out how to film video, which we didn't know how to do yet. There were a lot of really big unknowns. We're just 2 graphic or web designers, so we've never shot film before. We haven't done projects like this, so it was kind of which is why I was like, are you sure you want to do this? So it was a lot to kind of bite off as a huge, big project. And usually when you try to think of doing something like that, you immediately shut down. And you're like, no way, that's impossible. I mean, we don't have money, we don't have time, we don't have resources. But once you start really breaking down the process a little bit more, you can see how even a big project like this that seems really overwhelming can be broken down into smaller little pieces and attacked kind of one by one in a real logical step. We did all this planning and ended up getting it all done in time for Donovan to fly out, and he'll explain exactly his process and what he had to do.
So it was just me shooting in Europe, so it was a single person camera crew, which is really difficult to do. So I was doing the interviewing, audio, camera work, everything. Not really how pros do it, but it's all right. It was also shot in winter, so it was like 10 degrees most of the time. So that was pretty fun. We did one thing to minimize the risk of like going and doing this without knowing too much about it was we did test shoots and we did preparation stuff with our friends Ben Gibo and Amy Lithamane, and that was really a huge help because once I got there, I kind of knew the ropes a little bit.
Yeah, so going back into what the heck we were going to do is kind of to say you're going to interview 6 designers in 6 different countries, 6 unique cities, and you're going to give him a bag full of equipment and go do it. Having not filmed an actual interview before in his life, it's a little intimidating. But there are certain ways which we overcame a lot of these obstacles just by asking ourselves questions and figuring out how we could break down this idea into little manageable chunks and then spread that over time and really work through any issues we thought we had with time or money, how expensive we thought it was, or just having the network to accomplish something like this. When it came down to money, obviously we had to buy camera equipment, we had to buy sound equipment. He had to buy a flight over to Europe and train tickets all over the place, stay in hostels. There was a lot of things that quickly looked like it would get out of control, and like we're just too we're not independently wealthy, we don't have a lot of money, but we soon found that through planning it out very strategically and just breaking down each piece into little ideas, like, okay, let's take a look at Istanbul. Okay, you're going to be in Istanbul and then you'll need to be in Vienna the next day. Just how can we do that? How can we do that affordably? And once you start breaking it down into like, okay, we'll make him stay at a hostel and he'll only eat street food that day. Like you can start to see where you can save a lot of money and it turns into just a really expensive vacation for him, even though I'm sure it didn't feel like a vacation for him. But yeah, and quickly through today's technology, I think this speaks a lot to the capabilities we have today, is that doing something like this as sort of amateurs even 7 years ago probably would not happen. You know, the ease to shoot HD video with just a small camera that these photographers probably have here today, and to be able to do that and have an audio equipment set up and to be able to carry that around in a backpack and all over Europe, and just with a small laptop and an extra hard drive capture all this data and keep it on your computer until you came back, like that. So that kind of technology and ability to shoot a quote-unquote short film like that, it just wasn't possible. So we were lucky in that sense that we kind of were able to use technology, a lot of different technologies, Dropbox, even though the internet connection in Istanbul was in Budapest, was probably like, it was dial-up speeds. But we were able to finally make the technology work. Also, the internet as a resource for learning how we could take care of these things was huge for us. Just looking on Adobe's website, learning how to edit film real quickly, or just researching designers. We did almost all of our research on the web, just going into like Berlin graphic designer, and then just looking at a list of phone numbers and researching websites and being like, that's the one we want to talk to, and then being able to email or pick up the phone and call them, set up an interview. You know, just that sort of quick connection through the internet. Like, we all know how valuable the internet is, but it's just, for us it was amazing that we could make those connections so quickly without ever knowing who this person was, or having ever really got to know them or seen their work, or having known them through a friend, which is usually how we would find someone to interview. Or yeah, so it was amazing how all these pieces started to come together for us to be able to produce something like this in a short amount of time and with a very limited budget. But our networks definitely helped.
Yeah, so one thing that was really important was talking about the project and telling our friends. So make sure everyone knows about the project so that they can pitch in ideas, pitch in help, connections, anything like that. It was also really important to go outside of our own network and try and make contact with these designers who we didn't know. You know, I think it's really intimidating at first when you see this great designer and say, you know, why would they spend any time talking to me? But from their perspective, usually when they get an email especially from someone abroad, they're very, very likely to interact with you at the very least. So I think we got 2 no's and the rest were yeses. So you'd be surprised at how willing people are to help you in your project.
Yeah, and one of the biggest things that we saw as a hurdle at first was that we had very limited time, and also we put the pressure on ourselves for saying, oh, well, when you come back January 31st, we'll just edit all this video and be done by February or March. That was over a year and a half ago, and we have about 2 episodes finished. So 2.5. So one of the things that we quickly realized is that a lot of the frustrations and overwhelming amounts of time that we put on ourselves, our own restrictions, were something that was holding us back. And so you basically have to realize that, yeah, you can do some things quickly, but other things, it's okay if you can spread it out. So not having time can also be okay. Having a project take longer than you expected it, you always have to come back to the frame of reference that this is a side project, like we're not being hired by anyone to do this. So at the end of the day, taking your time is almost more important than trying to force yourself into a tight deadline just to get a project done because you've been telling everyone about it. And in the words of Massimo Vignelli, no one will remember if it was late, but everyone will remember if it was bad. So we really started learning how to take our time and do things right and not put the pressure on ourselves of, oh, we just shot all this video of all these people and they're going to want to see this in a month.
Let's push it out.
Yeah, so we just said let's push it out as fast as we can, but while maintaining the quality that we can. And also approval. I mean, we thought that we'd have to get all sorts of approval, international rights to shoot on the street and do all these things, but we soon realized that instead of looking for approval, we just thought we'd do it and then ask for forgiveness, which I think is sort of a better method unless you're doing something really sort of legally sketchy. Luckily, all we're doing is shooting video and on the street, and then people who are agreeing to our interviews. But it's really, I think what we learned is it's better to just get the ball rolling and start those dominoes in a forward progression so that you can get traction and get your project off the ground. And if someone has an issue with it, just ask for forgiveness. People are pretty forgiving about these things.
So,
Probably.
So this means I'm terrible at something, by the way. You are totally terrible at something. So anyway, so one thing that I had trouble with, especially with shooting video, was it's very, very frustrating when you're first starting out, because it should be. If you're brand new at something, if you try something that's outside of your comfort zone, it's going to be difficult. You're probably going to suck at it. So it's really important that you kind of build this frustration into the project and let it go back into the project. Shooting video on the street in Vienna and Budapest in the middle of winter when it's 5 to 10 degrees outside, it's not a very fun. I mean, it was fun, but it wasn't. At times, it was extremely frustrating. And in the interest of my own embarrassment, we have compiled a best of clips. I apologize for the language. Come on, wind. Wind. Jesus. Jesus Christ, stop jumping. Yeah, percussion. Focus. Thing sucks. Maybe like this music, man. Don't find all this interesting, man. Talking to myself. You win. Laughing right now at that last outburst. Enjoy it.
So it was a struggle, I think, to create a good portion of our B-roll and a lot of that video, but I think for Donovan it was still worth it.
Definitely.
At least it was real worth it to me because I got the great footage afterwards and didn't have to deal with that.
And he gets to make fun of it.
And I get to make fun of him for it. But I think really what this comes down to, Donovan can talk a little bit more about the struggle shooting, but still worth it.
Yeah, and you know, it's all about you know, doing something that you're really excited about. That's the main thing. And you don't have to go halfway around the world to do it. There are people here in Boston and here in the United States that are doing really, really cool projects that we are really, really excited about. Glyphosaurus being a web project done here in Boston. Nomadic Apparel is this cool company that I got the privilege of working with that sells t-shirts on the street. It's like a food truck. And then this was his CodePen, which is this really cool coding website. I have to check it out more, obviously. But yeah, so what you should focus on if you're starting a project like this is like talking to these types of people, seeing what they did, seeing what you can learn from them, and kind of expanding on that.
So it's really about buckling up and finding someone who's passionate about what you are and going out there and just doing it. So you don't need lots of time. There's all the time in the world. You don't need a lot of money. It'll come. You'll find a way to work through it. You don't need permission. We quickly found that out with Donovan swearing on the streets. You just need to take your idea, break it down into actionable items, and really find someone who you can partner with to tackle that. Because one thing that we found doing this project is if either one of us had started this, we probably would have dropped it because A, there's no one there to keep us accountable to anyone. B, it's an overwhelming project for one person to even consider how to tackle. So really what we wanted all of you guys to do today, we wanted to leave a lot of time today for everyone to talk together and really think through these name tags and think of what's the big thing that you want to tackle and go find someone else in this room to help you tackle that. Because without Donovan and the support that we had from Benji, Bo, Amy, Alice, Courtney, Sue, just so many people, Elliot, I mean, there's a lot of people in this room, we would have never been able to tackle typesetting or even get it off the ground. So that's just about all we have for you. And yeah, that's what I constantly keep on my desktop to remind me to keep working and not worry about what I have to do next, but just start doing it. So thank you.
Questions for these guys?
So I know we have lots of time. I wanted to leave a lot of time for questions because for those of you who have seen typesetting, I'm sure you have questions. For those of you who don't, we're here to answer as many as possible. And also, I really wanted to get everyone together and start talking to each other about these big projects you want to tackle and really network today. That's what we'd like you to do. Is we want you to leave here today taking the first step into tackling that big idea that you have. Any questions? Yes.
After giving all of this time and money and using all of your resources to do a project of this size, do you expect anything back from it, or is it just the sheer pleasure of doing something that you've always wanted to do?
That's a great question. So basically, after spending all this time, money, resources, and sweating and being in pain and Donovan swearing, do we expect anything back from this? That's one thing that we thought in the future may just happen, is that maybe someone want to buy some episodes or something, but we haven't really, I guess, formed a concrete plan on how we get paid for doing any of this or reimbursed. I mean, for us it was a labor of love kind of thing that we wanted to see happen. So yeah, I feel like if you start a project with the end goal is I need to make money off of this, then it's, yeah, or I want to be famous, or I want to, if you start with the end goal of that in mind, it'll be harder to complete the project and you'll get frustrated and it'll feel like a job. And for us, we really wanted to tackle this piece by piece and put our passion into it, and when it became overwhelming, step back. I think if we had tried to monetize this in a way, it would have diluted that experience and made it felt like a real job that we had to force ourselves into doing. So that's my opinion.
Yeah. I mean, from the beginning of the project, it was all about seeing if we even could do it, for one thing. because we weren't sure. Up until the last day before I left, I was calling Matt on the phone and being like, I don't know if this is gonna work. Like, this is crazy. Like, this is such a weird idea. So yeah, I mean, from the beginning, it was all about making a cool project. That's the end of the day. If we make something cool, I will be happy with that. It doesn't matter how much money I lose or make. Is it cool? Is it fun? Did I enjoy it? Did I learn something from it? Yeah.
So I loved what you said about it's okay to suck at something if you've never done it before.
Yeah.
You know, I think realistically though, we're living in such a risk-averse environment right now,
Yeah,
right?
definitely.
So when you talked about, you know, sucking at something, in the old days we called it experimentation. So how would you encourage, you know, more risk-taking and more experimentation?
So the question is, how would I encourage more risk-taking in our society where it's kind of frowned upon to take risks? I mean, my personal philosophy, especially in terms of design, is that if you're not taking a risk, you're taking the biggest risk you can possibly take. Because if you're not trying to go to the next level, take the next challenge, do the next thing, or do something very original, then it's your work will become very predictable, boring, corporate, maybe. Not sorry. I mean the stigma in corporate. So you know, it's challenging for students because they don't want to do something wrong, but at the same time, being too shy will often lead to having, you know, dull projects that really aren't helpful to them or anyone.
Also, I think speaking to that same point is a lot of people are afraid that when they go out and do something and they think it's subpar on their own, they're worried about releasing that, for people seeing that. I think that's what a lot of designers always want to insulate themselves, because they feel like, oh, I don't want to put out this product because I don't really feel good about it and I don't want people to think that's the best I can do. It's just doing it anyway and working on it and putting it out there and say, hey, this is the first time I've shot video, like, but I wanted to try this. Like, let's have a conversation about how it could be better. Or, you know, just being open with your vulnerabilities, I guess, and just really kind of pushing yourself to just say, hey, I know this isn't great, but it's the best I can do right now because I just tried this. It's more about making progress, trying new things, and taking steps one at a time. Question? Yes?
How long are the episodes?
How long are the episodes?
It really depends. 10 minutes, usually we shoot for 10 minutes. They're interviews with a specific designer. But yeah.
Yeah.
Sure.
Would you guys like to watch an episode right now?
Yeah.
All right, cool.
First or second?
First.
First or second?
We'll do the first list. Do you guys like the music boxes?
Yes.
Okay, cool. We'll show that. If I can get it. Hold on 1 second. Oh, this is episode 2. So this is a website. Yeah. Yeah. We'll get there eventually. Sound may be a bit sorry. Oh, thanks.
I moved to Vienna when I was 18. I came here to study, and I live here ever since. I didn't like it in the beginning. It was a very old, sleepy town, actually. It was still the time when Europe was separated in the Eastern and the Western Bloc, and that was very strange time. And I left Vienna in 1989 to live in Hong Kong, and during those 2 years, as we all know, history has changed everything, and the Iron Curtain opened up, and when I came back to Vienna, it was a totally different city than before. I have a child, 1993, I gave birth to my son Luke, and I also think that it's a fantastic city to grow up. After I had the child, I was trying to find out what my mission was, or what I want to make with my life, and it happened actually accidentally. I was a photographer, self-taught also, and when you work with photography, at one point you will need some text, or you need more than just the image, and it happened because I produced a CD cover for friends who had a band, and they wanted me to make photography, but then with all the photos I started playing around, and suddenly it was a CD packaging finished. After I did this first CD for the band, what I just mentioned, I got to know a leader of an orchestra. It's called Vienna Art Orchestra, and this orchestra was very famous since the 70s worldwide. It's a big jazz orchestra, and they were really very successful. And I knew him because our kids knew each other, and I showed him the CD that I did for this band, and he kind of liked it, and apparently he liked it so much that the next thing he did was he told me that he's going to celebrate 25th anniversary of his orchestra, no, 20th anniversary of his orchestra, and he wanted me to do the special packaging edition. I didn't hesitate to accept the job, even though I didn't have any idea how I would go about it. He said it would start in half a year. I forgot about it, and then he called me again. I have not prepared anything, and I told my friend Stefan Sagmeister about it. He's an old school friend of mine, and he was really getting mad at me, and he said, there are 500 Austrian designers scratching on the door of this orchestra to get this assignment, and you have the assignment, you don't do anything. I thought maybe Stefan is right, so I will take the adventure and I will try. I will see if I can make something. My idea was to produce a portrait of the orchestra. It's a container for 3 CDs and a booklet, and it works like this. I don't have the CDs here now and the booklet. I can show you how it works. It contains little musical parts. Then each of the languages has an opening, which is one of those holes. And now the outer box has also a special setting of holes, which defines the rhythm. So every time when these 2 holes meet, the air, which it's a sucker, it's an airflow that wants to go in by the vacuum process, then air can go through this language and it starts swinging. That is how the music is produced. And 3 of the languages they play when the box gets out, and the other 4 they are built in the other way. They play when it goes in. The first time I built in one of the languages in the wrong way, and that is when I heard that it actually also plays this way. Yeah? That is in the beginning I only had it work one way. And ever since, I'm very happy when I realized that I made a mistake, because mistakes
have a huge potential to improve the whole project. Yeah? If you focus on that mistake, you will find something that will be an advantage later. It's 10 voices which assemble the idea of an orchestra. You have 2 solo boxes, you have a rhythm box. This is a solo. And there's a bass box, and all 10, they are the idea of an orchestra. Producing that CD packaging, that was a piece of work where I found out what design is about, how design works, or how my design works. I have preferences, how I find things right and how I find things wrong. I have preferences in an aesthetical way, yeah. But how do I find something beautiful or not? So I think it's not a matter of style. I don't think that I have a style where I believe only this looks good, only this works well. Yeah. I love it to work with young designers, so I invite many young designers to cooperate with my projects, different designers, and they change my own view, they change my own style constantly. It actually starts with the search of understanding what this is about. What is the idea? What is the idea of the project? That is the beginning. I try to imagine that I am a part of it, and then I try to imagine that I may create something to let this project grow in some way. The most important thing is to open up your eyes and pay attention to what's going on around you. I think it's more important that you get connected to something in this world. Yeah? I remember I was riding the train that goes like 2 stories high. It crosses the city, U6. I wasn't a designer yet. And I ride in the train, I look outside and suddenly I realize I see architecture, I see car design, I see huge posters everywhere, I see dresses, fashion design, I see so many creations, everybody creates something, and I was totally depressed because I found out I don't create anything. But I mean, I have lived there for 13 years and I didn't see it. It was not because it was there that I was inspired, it was because I opened up my eyes and I realized it. And it probably could be a little frog in a pond. It could be anything. Opening up the eyes and get in touch with it, that is more important.
So that was episode 1, thank you. Edited by Donovan here, and shot and sound recorded and everything else.
I didn't curse at all. Questions?
More questions, probably more now, right? Yes.
Yeah, so while you're interviewing all these designers, is there anything that struck you as like commonality and inspiration?
Well, I think one thing that struck me was, especially designers in the region, for better or for worse, they're all influenced a lot by the historical events that happened in the last 30 years. So even the younger designers will mention, oh, you know, before the wall came down, or when this country was communist, or something like that. And it was very intriguing to see just how much influence historical events had on their design process and design sensibilities and aesthetics. So yeah, I think that's probably the thing that stuck out the most. Yes?
How did you pick the cities or the countries that you were going to go to?
Well, I mean, some were, you know, for instance, I really liked a couple of designers, Bülent Erkman in Istanbul. He's actually a friend of a friend. So, I really liked his work before the trip. And István Orosz in Budapest as well. I've been a fan of his since he was like the second designer I ever saw their work. So, certain designers we already knew, but a lot of research went into it. A lot of time spent on Aji's site, you know, just looking through design inspiration sites, ironically, and you know, finding the projects that we were really excited about and really wanted to see what the deal is with this project or with this studio. Yeah, we also wanted to, you know, anybody can go to New York and interview, you know, a super well-known designer like Michael Beirut, and that's great, and I encourage people to do that. But we really wanted to focus on design that was under the surface and really that maybe you wouldn't see in a design textbook yet, or you wouldn't see on a design inspiration site yet. So it was all about kind of breaking down that barrier and getting underneath the surface, because I think that, especially with design, that's where you find a lot of the best work. Yeah.
You said that it was a challenge for you, like kind of to contact the designers and get a reply from them and things like that. And when you decide to go ahead with the idea, have you designed or have you done like any visual thing, like kind of to present to this designer saying like, this is my project? Or was more like a text email saying like, I started this idea?
I mean, so yeah, I think that the initial thought and what I kind of first thought is, oh, we need to get all this stuff together. Like, we need a logo, we need to look real professional. Like, at the end of the day, it ended up being Donovan emailing them and them saying, sure, when are you coming? And just showing up, really. A lot of the identity that we later designed and the website and everything else kind of came afterwards. We realized that even though they were from another country, they were really receptive to us. And I mean, part of it is we kind of sought out people that spoke English, otherwise we'd have a really hard time. But I think that the initial reaction is, oh, we need to look real professional and go do this, when in reality, like if someone called you up and said, hey, I want to interview you, you probably wouldn't care really where they're from, or you're like, cool, yeah, come on over. So it's really kind of realizing that we're all human, and that if someone's calling and says, hey, I want to interview you, I love your work, it's probably going to be easy to talk to them, hopefully, unless they have a really large ego. Yeah.
That's okay.
Yeah, that's okay. Yes?
So you guys mentioned that you have several more episodes that you're still needing to edit, but I'm just wondering if you have any plans for more filming. Are you going to do anything stateside? What kind of the what's next for you with this project?
Okay. So I mean, doing a series doing a season in the United States, always kind of it's kind of a blessing and a curse thing, because at its core, this is a travel series. It's like all about going and finding something completely different. So it's kind of a double-edged sword. At the same time, you can still do that in the United States, and then you would also get a little bit more attention, probably, because people could share with their friends. They have all their networks are here. Right now, our interviewees, their networks are abroad, so or mostly abroad. So it's a little bit of a challenge in terms of that. You know, frankly, if this one season was all we got to do, I would be thrilled. That would be. It's been an absolute blessing to be able to work on this. But you know, of course we would like to do more. I don't think we'll do another season where it's just one person walking around, because that's stupid. And I know now that you know how hard that is. So, and then I also wouldn't want to go without, you know, Matt and like the team and like actual cameramen.
It's more that
Yeah.
I want to do the traveling now. He got to
Yeah.
do the fun stuff the first time.
Yeah.
I think that our initial ideas for what's next. So we've released on the website Vienna and Berlin, and we're soon to release Budapest.
Yeah.
We still have Istanbul, Warsaw,
It's hard to
and yeah, so we still have at least 3 episodes to release on the site, hopefully in the next couple months. But our initial ideas was to really break out and do a season 2 of Typesetting, possibly in either Central America or Southeast Asia. Yeah.
So I love Japanese design, so that would be like the ultimate holy grail of typesetting, but
That's not Southeast Asia, but that's
Right.
Japan or East Southeast Asia.
my mom is a geographer and she's gonna get really mad at me. But anyway, yeah, so I think that yeah, there are so many places to go. I mean, that's one thing that's really exciting about this project. We could literally spin a globe and point to somewhere, and there's probably something cool happening in terms of design there. There's an event in New York happening next month that's like graphic design in Zambia and how that has developed. So, you know, it's if we get the funding, if we get the Kickstarter going, or you know, get some sort of sponsor, then I think we would both be absolutely ready to do another sequel, you know, tomorrow or after we finish
And
this.
it's not that it's, yeah, I think we got to finish this first one first. But and it's not that we need funding to do another one, but we realize that it does help a bit. And now we're realizing there are things that are popular like Kickstarter where people can get advanced funding for doing cool things. So we're kind of looking at different models other than just like dumping our wallets out and being like, all right, I guess that's it. Yeah, so I guess that's a long-winded answer to your question. Yeah. Any other questions?
Yes.
How does this change you and your design?
That's
much more, right?
Yeah. So I mean, for me, it's been extremely helpful. I mean, it's you can see a clear division between my work before and my work after. I don't know why exactly that is. I mean, I think it's just about seeing new designs, seeing how other people approach it, and kind of seeing a completely left field process. You know, for instance, Elizabeth called for Basics 09. They do things sometimes the same, but sometimes completely differently. So it's all about, yeah, it's all about kind of soaking that in. And yeah, I mean, my work has benefited tremendously from it. Yeah, it's you can probably go to my website and pick out the ones that are pre-typesetting, post-typesetting.
Yeah, and I think for me it was more about learning how to insert risk taking into my work. You know, before it was about just trying to do it. Now it's about trying to do it just as good as it can be and trying to really push it past what I even think it could be. So I think just that tiny mindset shift after doing this whole project was that, like, you know, seemingly impossible projects like are possible once you break them down, and like it doesn't hurt to like shoot for the moon and just land at like getting up in the air for a little bit, coming down. So yeah, that's how it's impacted my process. One more question, and then everyone should talk with each other. No more? No more? Okay. Thank you guys so much for having us here. Thank you for coming to